Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Flynn. I ran into Scott at a U of A event, and Scott was kind enough to invite me out to give a talk today. And so when going back and forth, I thought one of the most interesting topics I could share some insights about is the new digital media industry tax credit that's coming to the province. So I put this little presentation together. It's about 15 minutes or so, and then happy to take lots of questions and go through all that stuff. So can everybody hear me okay? Okay, cool. So first about me, I am a computer programmer. I did my degree at the U of A, really great school for computer programming, if you consider it. But after that, I graduated and joined Bioware right out of school, and I started working on games like Baldur's Gate 2, and then eventually rose to become the director of technology for the company. And then at the time that EA purchased us in 2008, I switched my job to become very operations focused. So I started doing a lot of operations work, everything from strategy to strategic workforce planning, all that kind of stuff. And so then I was the GM of the studio and did that for 8 years until I left last summer, take a break, and figure out what to do next. So the tax credit is very timely for me, and I think it's timely for a lot of other people, because it really has invigorated a lot of interest in the province when it comes to investment and things like that, and I'll take you through why that is. So a little disclaimer. First of all, I am sharing this information for educational purposes only. Please do not make any decisions based on the content of this presentation. You should go out and seek independent advice from the experts after this. I don't want you to come calling me and say, hey Aaron, I started a game studio and I don't have any money yet from the government, so go consult some expert or even work with me afterwards, and I'll keep you apprised of things that I learned about it. But please do that. The legislation still has not passed yet. It's in reading, it's in committee, but it will pass. I'm confident of that. So there could be some changes, adjustments, even in this part of it as well. But so far, it's been a relatively smooth process. Okay, so what is the digital media industry tax credit? So in a nutshell, to boil some odd many pages of legislation down, it is a 25%. It's legislation that returns 25% of wages back to the employer if you're working on a game or other digital media project. And legislation defines what it is. Digital media project is something that has two of sound, video, and text. Now, additionally, one of the interesting things about the Alberta version of this legislation is that there's an additional 5% refund back on wages for eligible individuals who are minorities in STEM. That is, women, the disabled, and Indigenous people, which is great. It's a really nice way to increase diversity in the industry. Now, when it's called a refundable tax credit, and a refundable tax credit is different than a deductible tax credit. A refundable tax credit means that you get money back from the government. Typically, if you know the way taxes work, normally a tax credit is something that applies to your profit. So your tax credit is something that once you make a profit, the tax credit comes off that, and then you only pay tax on the differential. But a refundable tax credit is a check payable to in this case, the employer, the company who employs people, for the wages, for the eligible wages of those employees. So it is a big deal. There's a lot of money that's going to be spent by the government to support this industry through the use of these refunds. Oh, and everybody stop and get any questions about this. So why is it being introduced? Well, that's a great question. It's being introduced because Alberta wants to level the playing field between many other provinces that have similar tax credit programs. The big ones being Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia. All of those three provinces have long-established tax credits. Quebec's goes back 20 years almost now. And they have thriving digital media ecosystems thanks to this tax credit. There's half of all game development jobs in the country are in Quebec, for example, because of the consistency of this tax credit there to support investment in the province. Manitoba has them as well, and if you heard that Ubisoft just announced 100 jobs going into Winnipeg about a month ago, very much related to Winnipeg now being able to take advantage of this similar tax credit there as well. The Maritimes have it as well. The only province now, Alberta was one of the only provinces that didn't have it. I think Nova Scotia doesn't have one or something. No, Saskatchewan doesn't. Nova Scotia does have one, doesn't it? Yeah, it's got a really good one. Yeah, the Maritimes are really good. I think Saskatchewan doesn't have one, and then maybe Nunavut. Almost all of them have now. I think Alberta was the 8th of 10 provinces now to have them. So it's really good. And got to spend quite a bit of time consulting on the tax credit as it was, and was very happy with what they formulated. It's pretty good. So that's why I say there. I won't go into the programs, those programs here, but as I reviewed the legislation, as I understand the way the other provinces work, this is a pretty good program. It's modeled quite heavily after the British Columbia one. It looks most like the British Columbia one, except it is more valuable. The British Columbia one's at 17.5%, and the Alberta one's at 25 to 30%. So who's it aimed at? Well, the primary target for the tax credit is game studios and teams that are ready to hire employees. In other words, scale up. And the secondary target is small game studios with limited to no revenue. Now, the reason it's targeted those ones, or why I say it's targeted those ones versus just any other game studio there, is largely because this is a tax credit where you have to spend money to make money. A grant program such as the Alberta Digital Industry Media Grant, or the Digital Media Grant, allows you to start from basically nothing and gives you that initial capital you might need to go off and make your game. This tax credit is refundable as a percentage of wages spent. So the only way you're going to get money back from this tax credit is to spend some money first. So if you don't have that money to spend, this tax credit program is not for you. You would still be eligible for it. So if you're a founder or founders and you're paying yourselves a small amount of money, then you can still potentially claim that amount against the tax credit and get some money back. However, it is not intended to be there for anybody just to get started from zero. You should have some momentum going to enter this tax credit. If you don't have that, then I would encourage you to consider other programs like the Canadian Media Fund or the Alberta's Interactive Digital Media Grant to get that funding and additional support you might need for your game idea. Okay, so what are the possible outcomes? Why are, at the end of the day, we're doing all this, and what do we think we're going to see? Well, I think we're going to see the following things. First of all, I think we're going to see increased hiring. The fact that this tax credit reduces the barrier to hire people by directly supporting the hiring of individuals is huge, and is one of the big decisions any employer has to make when deciding to grow. And so I think it's going to have a very positive benefit of that. I think following up from that, you're going to see increased investment. Since every invested dollar can now go further, if a business has $1 million to invest, it now goes potentially 25 to 30% further if all those dollars are going into wages. I think you're going to see an increase in wages, the amount of money paid to individual employees, as we're going to see companies competing for talent more. Alberta's got a pretty good talent pool here for this kind of stuff, but it's not infinite, and so you'll see some competition for especially the best people. And then you're going to see more people officially entering the digital media workforce. You're going to see people who say, well, I didn't really consider it for me, or I was thinking something else, but now that I see all the job opportunities and all the good wages, maybe I'll consider that for my job too. And then I think ultimately in the long term, you should see a deeper and broader ecosystem of individuals and companies. You'll see more than just Bioware and Bioware and a few other smaller studios here in the city. Hopefully we'll see some studios in Calgary as well, because they can all benefit from this. All right, now some important considerations and restrictions to consider here. Okay, first of all, you have to apply for this tax credit. Okay, you've got to go through the application process and make sure that before you do anything or before you count your money, make sure you've got the thumbs up from the, in this case, Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, that you have been approved and the work you're doing qualifies. I don't think it's going to be a very heavyweight process. I think it's pretty straightforward, but don't just presume that at the end of the year of working on your game, you're going to get money back. You got to apply first. Secondly, the company and the employees must be resident in Alberta. Okay, they can be wholly owned Alberta-based companies. They can be subsidiaries of international companies, but they have to be Alberta-based companies. So you can't, if you have a Saskatchewan-based game company, for example, you can't try to claim it through Alberta. You can live in Alberta and you can try to get it to work through that, but you have to make sure that both the company and the residents and the employees are resident Alberta. One interesting one is the company's eligible salary and wages must exceed $50,000 per year. Okay, now that's an important restriction and consideration. It goes back to my earlier point around how this is not a tax credit program for people starting from zero, starting from scratch. You have to be spending $50,000 a year on wages to qualify for this tax credit, first and foremost. This was originally a larger number, and through consultations it got argued down. I think it was a really smart move to argue down, given where our ecosystem is. but it is an important consideration. Yes?
Quick question about number 2.
Yeah.
Can you be a corporation that exists both in Alberta and in the province?
Yes, that should work. So if that was the case, if you're a corporation that had offices in both Alberta and Saskatchewan, the employees who were making games or other digital media products in Alberta should qualify. But still, you have to apply first to make sure everybody knows what you're doing. And then but my understanding is that should work. Yes?
What's the talk about applicability for employees versus contractors?
Yes, good question. So employees versus contractors. Employees are eligible automatically. Contractors are not. However, contractors might be eligible themselves to declare their wages for that. So, for example, if you have in this case high voltage game development, and you're a team of 1, but you charge your services out to other companies, and then you pay yourself out of the income of that company, high voltage, then your wages might be eligible within high voltage. Okay. Next restriction. The company, you can't stack some of these things. Okay, so you've heard of the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Tax Credit, SRDD, or SRED. You can't double stack them. So in other words, pretty much game dev would be free if you had to do that. There are some things you can stack, but be very cognizant of that when you look into this, if you're going to get quite sophisticated with this. But yeah, be cautious that you can't stack some of these things. And then lastly, and this is an important consideration, companies are not obligated to do anything with return funds. Okay, there's nothing in the legislation that contemplates what you have to do with the money you get back. So let's say you're spending $1 million a year in wages, round numbers, you're going to get roughly $200,000 back. There's nothing that says that what the company has to do with the $200,000. Now, it should theoretically use it to hire more money, hire more people, do that way. But again, legislation does not dictate what has to happen with it. Hopefully, market forces will take care, and people will say, well, now there's money that's higher, let's be more ambitious for those things. My experience, game development companies tend to be pretty ambitious and want to do more cool things. But again, there's no requirement of that. So don't, when you go in, if you're going to work for a video game company in the near future, go in eyes wide open to that reality and make sure you're working for a scrupulous company that intends to do good things with the money it's getting back. Be cautious about that. All right, so the overall process is pretty straightforward in my opinion. First, you get organized while you wait for legislation to pass, which should be hopefully in May or June here. You apply through the right process, and then at the end of your taxation year, you submit your supporting documentation around the wages and eligible expenses which you think will qualify. So it should be pretty straightforward, I'm told by the minister. They don't want to spend a lot of time doing these things. They want to make sure everything's on the up and up. You're probably getting a lot of this information ready for your taxes anyway, for your expenses and wage expenses, etc. Certain payroll ones, for example, you've got all files of employees can get T4s and that kind of stuff. So it all should be broken out pretty done anyway. So it's just a matter of marking. My belief is just a matter of marking which ones are eligible and make sure you've got the appropriate documentation to back that up. And away you go. And then sometime in the future, you will get a check